Ask anyone in the world who knows anything about boxing who the greatest boxer in history is, and they will all say the same name.
Muhammad Ali.
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 Ali.
Unquestionably the most significant fighter in boxing history, Muhammad Ali was a true giant of the sweet science and a hero to people from the halls of the United Nations to the ghettos of Africa. But the self-proclaimed greatest wasn't always held in such high regard.
The world denounced him. People would pay to go to fights to see him beat. But he stood right there. He went from being despised to the most loved and renowned person on the planet because he stood for something.
When a 22-year-old Cassius Clay first introduced himself to the public, whether or not people liked him wasn't important. He was in a rush to get to the top, and the fastest way to get there was to call out the current champion and most terrifying man on the planet, Sonny Liston.
Man, I ain't scared. I come to your house at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for you. I ain't scared of nobody. It's gonna be a hard. It's gonna take a good man to whoop me. You can look at me, I'm loaded with confidence. I can't be beat. I had 180 amateur fights, 22 professional fights, and I'm pretty as a girl.
Liston hadn't lost a fight since the challenger was 12 years old, but that didn't stop Cassius Clay composing a symphony of fluid boxing to utterly destroy the champion. After 6 rounds of punishment by the young prodigy, Liston retired, hopelessly outmatched.
I shook up the world! I shook up the world! I shook up the world!
Only days after dethroning Liston, Cassius Clay shook up the world again by announcing that he had changed his name to Muhammad Ali, in keeping with his newfound faith in the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Nation of Islam. It was only the beginning of Ali's social and political agitation, and he began to use his platform to promote ideas that troubled white America. This came to a head in 1967, when the U.S. Army attempted to draft Ali to fight in the Vietnam War.
Will you go into service as such?
This would be 1,000% against the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the religion of Islam, and the Holy Quran, the holy book that we believe in. This will all be denouncing and defying everything that I stand for.
Clay's induction refusal cost him his title, and he faces a possible 5-year prison sentence. He claims exemption as a minister of the black Muslim faith.
After successfully defending his title 9 times, the greatest boxer in the world in the prime of his athletic career was no longer allowed to do what he was best at. Barred from obtaining a professional boxing license from 1967 to 1970, Muhammad Ali toured college campuses speaking in support of civil rights and defending his decision not to go to war.
I haven't burnt my own draft record, but what I'm doing is legal. This is why I believe I'll receive justice in the higher court. You can deny the draft on any grounds, but you'll have to go to court. It's law. If you lose, you go to jail, which I said I do. My fight is legal. But if you notice, I'm been the most persecuted. I'm not allowed to work in America. I'm not allowed to leave America. Home of the brave, land of the free.
It took 3 years for Ali's case to make it through the courts. But eventually, his conviction was overturned and his boxing license restored. But the Ali that returned to the ring was a different man.
Ali hasn't fought professionally since March 1967, when he knocked out Zora Folley, and he's the first to realize that the effects of 3 years away from the ring will not be made good overnight. His present attitude is in fact tinged with something suspiciously like humility, a quality he was never famous for before.
Well, I had to lose my weight. Then after losing all of my extra weight, which is a rush, I still have 10 pounds, 15 pounds to lose. I have to toughen up my body. My timing was off, my reflexes. No heavyweight in the history of boxing, from Jack Johnson, Gene Tooney, John L. Sullivan, Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis, Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, all of them. Even if these old great fellas took 1 year off for doing nothing, and you gave them a 6-week notice for a 15-round title fight, they would have told you it was crazy.
Have you slowed up?
A little bit, but I think I can get it back.
Despite this, Ali was measured and generous when reflecting on the struggles he'd been put through due to his political stand.
Have you any regrets about what's happened over this last 3 years? What's the principal thing?
No, I don't. I have no regrets. Nor am I angry at any of the boxing officials, authorities who did what they thought was right when they took the title because of my reasons on draft and religion, and I did what I thought was right. So it looked like everything is clearing up, and that's all in the past. But I have no regrets at all.
Muhammad Ali had been allowed to return to the ring after 3 years in government-imposed exile due to his refusal of the Vietnam War draft. But the fight game he returned to had changed as much as he had in the intervening years. In Ali's absence, the heavyweight title had ended up in the thunderous hands of Smokin' Joe Frazier, who had publicly supported Ali's stand on the draft. Frazier was a Baptist and told Life magazine sports editor Dan Wolfe, "If Baptists weren't allowed to fight, I wouldn't fight either." In Ali's third fight back and Frazier's second defense of the title, the two undefeated champs met at Madison Square Garden in a bout that was billed as the fight of the century. The price that Ali had paid for his moral stand became clear as Frazier won a unanimous decision and handed Ali his first ever defeat.
When he came back in the first really important fight against Frazier, he took a terrible beating. And so in a sense, not only had he paid financially and emotionally, but he paid with his blood.
The perception that Ali was finished as a top-level fighter was compounded by a second loss to little-known Ken Norton, who managed to break the older man's jaw on the way to a split decision victory. While Ali's career was seemingly collapsing, a new force had established himself in the heavyweight division, the 6'4" destroyer named George Foreman. Within 4 years of turning professional, Big George had earned a fight against Joe Frazier for the heavyweight title. Both men were undefeated, but despite not being involved in the fight, the specter of Ali's actions hung over its promotion.
Well, I'm not going to say too much about George because you all know that I'm not really a great rapper, mouth run offer. You know, it is like some people we know. And, I'm very happy that the fight is coming off because one particular reason, I feel like you need people like George and myself in the fighting game every day because fighting is a sport and it's not a politician thing and it's not a thing to be rapping off and talking about it.
But when the talking stopped, Foreman absolutely deconstructed the champ. When the fight was waved off 2 minutes into the second round, Frazier had been knocked down 6 times. At 24, George Foreman was now the heavyweight champion of the world and celebrated by demolishing the other man to beat Ali, Ken Norton, in another 2-round annihilation. Ali's second loss had refocused him. He had retreated to the woods of Deer Park, Pennsylvania, to get himself back into peak physical condition, also managing to reinvigorate his dramatic flair.
I'm trim, my jaw's ready, look at my body. Look at me, in perfect shape, 212 pounds, same way you fought Sonny Liston. Chopped down 85 trees for this fight. Talking about Norton closing my mouth. You tell Norton he opened my mouth wide up. Don't believe that stuff, predicting on the predictor. I'm gonna be so fast, watch what I'm gonna do with my hands in the ring at night. I'm gonna be so fast, if Norton doing the dirty stuff, I'm gonna reach him nowhere and pull out a long cane. And
He won the rematch with Norton and then followed it up by winning a rematch with Joe Frazier shortly afterward. Having avenged both of his losses, he was now in the perfect position to once again challenge for the title. An unheard-of promoter named Don King set the fight up in Kinshasa, the capital of what was then Zaire, dubbing it the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad arrived in Africa early and quickly set about endearing himself to the locals.
He walked down the street. He could walk down the street in Africa. I mean, he'd pick up 100 people, be right behind him, hollering, Ali Boumaier, and marching down the street. Ali was that much of a draw.
Despite the enthusiasm of the locals, Few people gave Ali a chance to win the fight. Foreman came into the bout undefeated after 40 fights, 37 of which he had finished by stoppage. But Ali's self-belief was back.
I said, last night I had a dream. When I got to Africa, I had one hell of a rumble. I had to beat Tarzan's behind first for claiming to be the king in the jungle. For this fight, I've wrestled with alligators. I've tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning and put thunder in jail. You know I'm bad. I have murdered a rock. I injured a stone, and I hospitalized a brick. I'm so bad I make medicine sick. I'm so fast, man, I can run through a hurricane and don't get wet. When George Foreman meets me, he'll pay his debt. I can drown a drink of water and kill a dead tree. Wait till you see Muhammad Ali.
He entered the biggest fight in boxing history as the 4-1 underdog. Some in Ali's camp begged him to pull out, scared Foreman might literally kill him in the ring. But the former champ had other things in mind, having perfected his now legendary rope-a-dope strategy. Ali intended to use the ropes and his movement to absorb or evade the worst of Foreman's power. It was an incredibly risky and dangerous move that suddenly and dramatically paid off in the 8th.
This was the fight that put Ali firmly front and center on the world stage. This was the story of a handsome prince who had been unfairly denied his crown, had journeyed to the heart of Africa, came back and reclaimed it. And at that point, if he hadn't been before, Muhammad Ali became the most famous, most recognizable person on the face of the earth.
3 years after being banned from boxing, public opinion had caught up with Ali. His anti-war stance was now seen as an heroic act, and his reclaiming of the heavyweight title, a triumph of justice for a man treated unfairly by the system. His transformation was perfectly summarized by the man he beat to complete his journey back to the top, George Foreman.
Well, Muhammad is a hero. Once you become a hero, you're never sad for a hero. You're really proud that they took their stand, the stands he's taken. I'm really proud of it.
He's clapping because he's the promoter, not sure.
Thanks for watching, and remember, if you want more fight sports in your life, just hit the subscribe button.